Hello, this is a quick vid to go over a Graviton Forfeit build I put together to help get through the bridge encounter on contest mode on day one. It's obviously not something that you got to run now in order to do it, but I think it might be interesting to people to see how I made the build specifically for the purpose in the raid. I think in high-end content, you really need to build craft to get every advantage that you can, especially when you're a player such as I am, which I don't think is an amazingly mechanically great player. I leverage everything I can out of my build to be successful. The challenge that I was trying to solve when I was making this build was that we'd been struggling a little bit on some occasions to get the last swords across the bridge. Particularly last guy, he's facing down normally an entire floor full of ads, a couple of champs, maybe some wizards, and he's got to take the sword bearer down, get the sword and get across. And once you've got the sword, you can't block, so you're particularly vulnerable. So a mate of mine, Mongrel, actually came up with the idea of using the invis, and as soon as my mind started going down that route, I was thinking, okay, Graviton, extend the invisibility. So that's where I started putting the build together. Now I'll go through the aspects and fragments that I was using. I'm going to try and emphasize the stuff that was actually important. There's stuff in here which isn't generally important to the build. It's just sometimes quality of life, sometimes it's just stat boosting stuff. Now when using Graviton, as per the Coolguy vid, which I'll probably put a link to in the description or in the post that I'm doing this on, you get more benefit from running low recovery. The exotic perk for the armor piece not only extends your invisibility but gives you greatly increased recovery. Now what that does is effectively kind of take your recovery to about like 9.5 level, regardless of what your recovery is at that point. So when you're in Viz, your kind of recovery goes to 9.5. So running 10 it actually nerfs your recovery, but anything below it obviously increase it, and means that you don't have to build into the stat almost at all if you're using this, and you're going to be using it for your healing. And that's really where a lot of the builds, when I'm putting together, I'm thinking about what stats I need, and more often than not, I'm thinking about where's my healing coming from, right? Now, in honesty, the Graviton healing, the fact that you get increased recovery, to me, that is kind of a backup worst case extra healing effect. Because if you're truly taking advantage of that, then that implies that you're going in Viz and you're staying in Viz until you've recovered. Now, I don't like that passive kind of play. I don't think it's good enough typically for endgame, because especially in this situation that I was trying to solve, I was we're going to be on plates. It means you can't get off the plate, or you can't get off the plate for very long at all. And the ads will tend to fire at the last position you were visible to them. If you've got stuff in there that's doing splash damage, if they're throwing grenades, how many times have we heard, "How did you get me? I was invis," right? You know, they're still going to pound the area or carpet bomb the area with the Boomer Knights and so on. So I don't think relying on the Graviton Forfeit healing was enough, but it was fine for a backup. The main thing I'm using that for is for the extended invisibility. So when I'm going into my fragments, I've got one eye on what stats I'm building to. Obviously, I don't care about recovery. I do want mobility, and I do want resilient. Well, primarily I want resilience, and then my secondary I was going for mobility. Of the remainder of the stats, I don't really care, but I went into discipline. Now, so I'll just quickly go through my aspects. This is embarrassing, but I pretty much always use these two aspects. I don't think I've ever used Trapper's Ambush. Now, I know that there's a lot of good builds you can do with Trapper's Ambush, certainly using Omnioculus and all that kind of stuff. But I was always going back to the different trees. I think it was top tree where it was always the dodge invisibility rather than anything else. So this is what I'm more comfortable with, and it's got, to me, it's got less steps. You know, you get pushed, you dodge. You know, it's just mechanically simple. I think it's the best way to go. But I will try and open my mind up at some point and try and start using trappers. I do enjoy the kind of dive attack on the Strand Hunter and that. Anyway, first off, Devour. Devour is obviously an incredibly strong ability. I used to do lots of stuff on Devour Lock, and now it's on the other classes. Both my Hunter and my Titan has pretty much always got this nailed to them. It allows an aggressive play style, and it works very well when you've got the ability to move. As long as you can keep pushing into moving into different positions, then you can, well, keep killing, but also keep picking orbs. Every time you pick up an orb with this fragment on, you're going to get full health and shields instantly. And that does kind of, when you're having to play a static playstyle like on the plates, there could become a point where you lose Devour. Now, it's unlikely in the encounter that we're playing on, but it is a possibility, and I'll show you once we get to the mods and that how I kind of worked around that. But anyway, Devour is the key one. I wanted extended invisibility and invisibility in Devour straight away, so that's in there. I really like this one. I know it's building into a recovery, but quite often I find where it comes into its own is when you're getting pushed by an aggressive major. You're battering them, they're battering you. Other ads are putting bullets into you. They're getting to you at the point where they're low health, but so are you. Right? You probably experience these situations yourself, and at that point, you can finish them, go invis, and recover. Take your time picking apart the rest of the ads, so you're not then kind of left 1 HP after taking the champ or the sword bearer in this case down. You can and then ripped apart by the red bars around you. You can take care of the major and then recover. So that's why I like that. Even if it's playing into a stat that I don't really care about, it's extra invisibility. And actually, if you see the gameplay of where I use this, it actually came in useful. This guy, I'm going to say primarily I used it for the stat to get up to 100 resilience with ease, but also I had a swashbuckler weapon on me. I was constantly getting pushed by thralls, punching them and getting health regen. Happy days. I'm happy with that. So they were my fragments and aspects that I chose. Other key thing was I used marksman's dodge. You can play a very kind of ability focused play style using gambler's dodge, but marksman's is the slowest cooldown, and fastest cooldown, and with high mobility that meant that effectively I had the dodge ready to go whenever I needed it. And like I was saying, the dodge is my protection, it's my healing, and I'll quickly show out the mods on my class piece, how it's like played into that as well. So going on to the mods on my class piece, powerful attraction straight off. Don't worry too much about that. I'm not entirely certain. I think maybe that might have been there when I was running a special finisher build. I knew I was going to be doing finishes, so maybe I did leave that on. I think if I was going to do it again, I might have gone into bomber. But regardless, ignore that. Powerful attraction is the key bit. So if you imagine, I start to get pushed, I start to get battered. I'm in a little bit of a tricky situation. I'm on the plate. I can't really get off the plate to go seeking orbs. I don't want to just go invis and just sit there and wait for my health to come back. Most of the time it's not going to work anyway. Acolytes will be dropping grenades on me, boomers will be blowing up the plate, and the thrall will probably just sit there waiting for me to come back. So what I'm doing is I'm made my build with such high mobility to have my dodge whenever I need it, and then when I dodge, powerful attraction draws in the orbs from around me, so I don't have to leave the plate. The orbs come to me, which then, going back to my fragments, orbs get drawn into me, instantly gives me devour if I've not already got it. But the key bit for me is that it counts like a devour kill. It's giving me back my full health and my full shields, and I can do that. I can keep myself alive without leaving the plate. Something that I think even I would have struggled to do on Hunter, pretty much with. Well, I guess I could have used recuperation and better already on the other Hunter builds, but this way, by using Devour and that powerful attraction, frees up my boot mods to be whatever I want them to be. And high-end content, for survivability, normally I'm using recuperation and better already. But because I don't need that, because Devour is instantly giving me all of my health back as soon as I pick up an orb, means I can run Avoid Weapon Surge, and Absolution to give me get back ability energy on everything. I had some concern that maybe I'd run out of ammo at some point, and let's face it, the ammo mods are cheap. I think if I was going to do exactly the same thing again, I might have gone in for insulation, just to get more my ability energy back. So a dodge, suck in the orbs, instantly get a chunk of that back. Again, looking back on it, I might have, instead of running proximity, I could have ran utility kickstart, probably take off the Reaper. I felt like the Reaper was synergizing well because I was expecting to use my dodge quite a bit, and I wanted orbs on the floor for healing and to get my super back if I needed it. And yeah, it worked fine. On my chest piece, I see a lot of people stacking same copy of resistances. You get a diminishing return every time you use the same one, whereas if you spread them across different ways, you can get the full effect of two. So I knew I was going to get pushed by a lot of thrall. I knew that the Boomer Knight, the majority of everything in there is arc. Thrall melees are arc. There's wizards are arc. There's a lot of arc in there. The acolytes and the acolytes fire void, where they throw solar grenades. The barriers, I think actually were coming in with a mix of different guns. I think sometimes they were Boomer Knight arc. I think sometimes they were firing the kind of more like acolyte void, and I think other times they were shooting that kind of solar spread one. But regardless, wherever I can, I'm hitting different resistances that are relevant to the encounter. I think if I didn't have to have using free energy on my mobility, I possibly would have gone concussive instead of void, because concussive would be a good one for pretty much everything. The melee's good because there's a lot of things pushing the plate and getting in close. Melee, to my understanding at least, and you see it's in there, reduces incoming damage from combatants that are at point blank range. That is not specifically melee attacks. That doesn't protect you just from things punching you. It protects things from things, I think, within 5 meters. So basically, if you're in a position where things are getting very close to you, whether shooting or punching you or not, that's protecting you. So there's something to think about. I'm normally running concussive, but in this encounter, because you're getting pushed so much and because things aren't dying quite as easy as you'd like them to, I went in for melee resistance on that. Before I go over my arm mods, I'll just quickly run through the weapons I was running, because there's lots of barrier in there, so I wanted an anti-barrier weapon fast. I just preferred an auto to a bow, if I'm honest. I've obviously got 3 archetypes of auto, 360s, 900, I'm not certain, and then you got the middle guy, the adaptive frame, which is 600s. I felt like the faster firing ones wouldn't have the range to reach out to where some of the acolytes are. I potentially might have tried a 360, but they tend to feel much more clunky and useless at short range, and you are killing thrall that are pushing you, or you're killing various ads that are pushing the plate. So I thought adaptive was a pretty good compromise. It can still reach out quite far. I have had this gnawing hunger for a long time, and I've known it to perform very well with anti-barrier auto. I like that in anti-barrier auto. When you've got the anti-barrier on it, if you can line ads up, you can fire straight through them. It's got a damage perk, and it's void, which meant that I could have cheap mods as far as siphons and loaders go. Got auto loading Pyramid Dust. That, along with Smoke Bomb, were kind of ways of blinding the sword bearing knights if they pushed the plate and I was struggling with it. Both of those would have stopped them in their tracks straight away if I needed to. And then I've got, I don't know, maybe controversial, but I know that a couple of my team were very much find it very useful. But I've got Parasite. You've got constant ads walking into your guns, which meant that it was really easy getting up 20 stacks of Parasite every time that you wanted to reach for it. And that meant that pretty much you could take very low the champs and the swordbearer knights. So that's why I've got that on. I think one thing I didn't mention in my aspects, I got the Deadfall Quiver. It wasn't intended to use my super for doing damage or anything. It's obviously not a damage phase, and there's no specific guy that I've got to kill that I'm going to need a super for. What I wanted was to have the quickest recharging super, and have it stick around, have the tether stick around for a while, just in case I got pushed by a sword bearer. I could put that on the floor, blind him effectively, suppress him, use it so I don't have to think about him for a while whilst I cleaned up the area of ads if I had to, and then take him out with a big 30% debuff. I very much needed it for the end, where I had to go and get the last sword and take it across. So I dropped that. If you watch the video, which I guess I'll put a link to or whatever, I dropped the tether at the end, threw a Parasite onto him, dropped down, and the intention was actually that the Parasite was going to kill him in one, but I ended up finishing him using the invisibility from the finish to pick up the sword and then get across the bridge. Last bit, I guess, grenade crit start, because I've got 100 disciplines, so I expected to be using my grenade a fair bit. Now, on the headpiece, it's worth noting I've gone for a pretty selfish build on this. The key bits, typically in any raid situation, I'd be running heavy finder and heavy scout, because it would be typically the best way for the whole team to be successful at whatever they're doing. Now, in this situation, no one was running out of heavy. Using heavy on occasion on the barriers, might be using heavy on occasion on the thing, but it wasn't. There was no damage phases. You weren't using up all your heavy, then having to get it back. What was important to me was that if I used my super earlier in the encounter, that I could get my super back. And it was, again, if you watch the footage, that's exactly how it worked. I needed orbs for Devour, and if I used my super, I needed to be able to get it back. And both of these mods obviously help me do that. So, gone through the whole build. What I typically do when I put together a build, And look, I know that you can use D2 armor picker and so on to do this kind of probably with some automatically, but normally what I do is kind of take all the mods off that are giving me stat bonuses, and then think my way through, okay, how many pieces of artifice armor have I got? Well, in this case I've actually got 4 pieces, which is lovely. And then I can think, where am I going to put those 3 points to level out the stats? So straight away you're thinking 3 into Brazil, that's made that a flat 100, beautiful. Then I'm thinking 3 into discipline, because 100 discipline, that's beautiful. I want to get that into more in levels, so the next one's into recovery, sorry, mobility even. So there's my flat. And then I've got 3 left, and I'm thinking, well, there's no benefit to put it into any of the others here. That'll only take me to, I mean, I guess if I really wanted more melee, well, I could have put it into that, so that one of my pieces could have half a melee mod. But I thought, I'll stick it into recovery, because it takes that to 2 recovery. There's no harm in doing it. There's no better use of it, if I'm honest. And then at that point, then, well, I've got my 100 discipline. I've got my 100 resilience. The 100 resilience being the key bit. Now I want to have my healing whenever I want it, so that's when I'm loading in all my mobilities. I'm not going to bother doing it, but that takes me to 100 mobility. So I was really happy with the way the build worked, and I've been talking to someone recently about Graviton Forfeit. I knew how the exotic bit worked, and I built into it. But to summarize, in endgame especially, almost the first thing I'm always asking myself is, where am I getting my healing from? Because unless you're going to play very, very passive, which in a raid situation particularly, you can't. There's not very many roles where you're not required to do something and put yourself in front of enemy fire and get shot up. So you need to be thinking, where am I getting my healing first? First and foremost, where am I getting my healing? I'm on a void a subclass. I'm almost always going to be running Devour. It's just so good. And then past that point, okay, well, if I'm running Devour, how do I get orbs? I've obviously got to create them, but more than that, I've got to collect them. And if I'm having to be static on a plate, then how do I get the orbs to come to me? Powerful attraction. If I'm getting pushed by something that can hurt me and I can't kill straight away, especially if I'm using parasite at close range, how do I deal with that situation? Well, I've got a blinding grenade launcher, I've got a smoke bomb, but most of all, I've got a freaking tether, and just drop at my feet and just stop everything around me shooting me. And then the whole point of the build is, how do I get that sword on the floor? How do I pick it up whilst invisible and get across the bridge lovely and safe? And I've got my tether in combination with the parasite, in combination with Graviton Forfeit, in combination with the go invis with a finisher or vanishing step. If you want to watch it, I will put a link to the video where I use this build to successfully get through the bridge on day one. We were being kind of properly cautious on that last bit to get me across okay, and unfortunately I had a guy, I think it was Stringer, who was the wish ender, being Overwatch and taking out wizards from long range from the platform above. But yeah, all came together, and apologies for the exuberant bad language at the end. All right, cheers.